and good evening. My name is Oliver Wieck. I'm the Secretary General of ICC Germany. And I cordially welcome you to our workshop on the supply chains and circular economy, which we are hosting together with our valued partners, Deutsche Post DHL and the Federation of German Industries. This is the third of a series of workshops on our ICC forum, The Future of International Supply Chains, Sustainable, Digital and Smart, which was inaugurated on June 16th. The high-level political panel included Executive Director of the International Trade Center, 2 German state secretaries, and, of course, the CEO of Deutsche Post DHL, Frank Appel. Ladies and gentlemen, more than 500 registrations for this workshop is a clear indication how strong the interest in this topic is, and rightly so, as not least the latest IPCC report has once again shown us how urgent climate action has become. Climate action is everyone's business, and the global business community is certainly playing a leading role also in the design and the production for the circular economy. If we are able to increase the use of circular materials, if we manage to better protect and conserve the use of our resources, we will also be able to reduce our consumption and material footprint and, most importantly, our carbon footprint. That is why more and more companies around the world are increasingly focusing on circular economy, also within their supply chains. In our workshop today, you will benefit from the experience of international and national experts from business, politics, and academics. You will learn more about how you can help to protect, conserve, and recycle resources within your supply chains. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased that Dr. Klaas Oehlmann agreed to moderate today's workshop. Klaas is Managing Director of the Circular Economy Initiative of the Federation of German Industries. This initiative takes a holistic approach on the issues of resource conservation and security of supply, from product development to recycling. The goal is to identify technological potential and define the necessary framework conditions for a functioning circular economy. The initiative offers a platform for an exchange of the business community with politics, science, and society in order to jointly develop instruments for promoting the recycling raw materials market and to tap potentials of waste reduction. Before I hand over to him, I want to thank Johannes Kirchhoff, Managing Partner of the Kirchhoff Group, and the other distinguished panelists for their time and dedication, and of course, our dear participants for your interest in this workshop and for joining us today. Klaas, the floor is yours.
Oliver, thank you very much, and welcome from my side, welcome from Berlin. I'm really happy to be with you here today with all of you. I saw this impressive list of participants from all over the world, all continents. So great hello from Berlin to everyone. Thanks a lot to ICC Germany and Deutsche Post DHL for letting this event happen. And I don't want to talk too much because we want to use our time to get into the topic which Oliver mentioned already. Just some few words at the beginning. My side, and then I will tell something real quick about the structure of today's session. So, circular economy, what does this mean? What is circular economy about? I don't want to talk about much, but what's for sure is circular economy is a mega trend worldwide, became a mega trend, and it is, of course, about reuse, recycling, and recovery of material to feed them back to circles, to raw material circles, and use them as long as possible. It is about products, it's about product design, how we use products and what are our business models with products. And it is, of course, as well about services. What do we have for services to improve circular economy, product circles? What are possible business models? What social, environmental, and economic innovation potential of the circular economy? Better that works we want to discuss today. And for this, we have, as you saw, 2 hours. We will use them and get at the beginning a keynote from Dr. Johannes Kirchhoff, followed by Food for Thought from Professor Melanie Erben. And at the end, we will have a panel with 4 great panelists to discuss about challenges of the circular economy worldwide in international supply chains. So that's from my side. I'm very happy to be with you, and I want to shortly introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Johannes Kirchhoff, from Managing Partner of the Kirchhoff Group and CEO of Faun and Zoller Group. Dr. Johannes Kirchhoff has an experience in the automotive sector and innovation policy and innovation business for decades, and he will address in his keynote the topic of supply chains fit for circularity, challenges for industry and politics, and we will come back to this topic, of course, in the panel later on. Mr. Kirchhoff, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Roman. So, dear ladies, dear gentlemen, I hope you can all hear my voice clear. That's okay. Just raise your thumbs, maybe. Okay, that sounds good. So I would like to wish you all a warm welcome to this exciting event that the ICC has organized. We live in challenging times. It is important to talk about it. So thank you for organizing an opportunity to do so. Beforehand, some words about myself and about Kirchhoff Ecotech, the municipal vehicle division of our group. I'm managing partner of the Kirchhoff Group and Kirchhoff Ecotech GmbH in Iserlohn, Germany. Kirchhoff Ecotech Group includes the Faun and Zoller groups, two global players in the manufacturing of vehicles for refuse collection, logistics, and street sweepers. In these areas, the Kirchhoff Ecotech Group has been committed to the further development of alternative drive technologies since many years. In particular, the hydrogen fuel cell electric drive. As a board member of the BDE Circular Economy Initiative, I'm heading this initiative, and I'm actively, of course, involved in the discourse around the topic of circular economy. Raw materials are the foundation of our global value creation. The ways in which they are produced, traded, and distributed have implications for companies, the political sphere, and for people around the globe. The challenging of designing smart supply chains which serve the markets in efficient and productive ways while maintaining human rights and respecting environmental limitations is one of the key concerns to be tackled with the current pace of climate change. There is increasing evidence that the introduction of circularity in global supply chains will become an important lever in achieving a more resilient trade system. The transition is strongly needed, as ever more frequent warning signs make evident. Without a doubt, one of the clearest and loudest warning signs in recent years has been the crisis which is influencing global markets as we speak, up to this very day, the COVID pandemic. We saw supply chains being abruptly disrupted, creating chaos around the world. Now, those have gradually restored themselves again, but depending on the region, the process of returning to normal varies greatly. It is striking that some supply chains which we previously assessed as very reliable, such as plastic, wood, and metal production, are still struggling to return to pre-COVID conditions. This was and still is a reminder for all of us to reevaluate the stability of our current trade system and a unique opportunity to introduce new and hopefully better ideas into the old structures. The pace of climate change combined with the COVID crisis has heightened the importance of this question. How can we make global supply chains more resilient and less vulnerable to external influences? In my opinion, the answer to this question can be, among others, strongly found in the tools and the approach of circular economy. Circularity in this context means to consider products and raw materials with their whole life cycle in mind, from cradle to cradle. Products must be analyzed and optimized along the 5-stage waste hierarchy: prevention, reuse, recycling, recovery, and if all the pre-stages fail, disposal. For businesses to adopt circularity in their processes while staying competitive, the circular economy has to be widely integrated on a global scale. It must become a political priority to create coherent frameworks to foster the adoption rate of circular business models. Let me highlight 4 factors which are essential for increasing sustainable circularity in supply chain. The first one is product design as an anchor of circularity. Most properties a product will have throughout its life cycle are decided in the design phase, including its reprocessing potential. That is why we need good strategies to introduce consistent standards which ensure the implementation of product-specific eco-design criteria. The product's potential to be reused, recycled, remanufactured, and recovered must be increased, and the right legal framework can help maximizing the positive impact of this design approach, either for the circularity of the product itself or the material it is made of. Through standardized rules, the eco-design approach can successfully be implemented. As a second factor, I will use this opportunity to focus on the potential of circular economy for stable raw material markets, and I promise I will try to keep it short. Traditionally, production processes are thought of in linear ways, ending in the last step of product disposal. This non-holistic approach can be harmful, especially if one considers that on average a product loses 95% of its raw material waste after one use cycle. This means a significant loss of value and unsustainable treatment of natural materials if the product of raw material is not being recovered. Not considering a product's recovery potential is not understanding its full value potential. Material extraction on a global scale is growing progressively and will double by 2060 if it continues its current growth pattern. The International Resource Panel found that resource extraction and processing activities cost more than 50% of emissions of global greenhouse gas emissions. This number shows the huge potential the right circular economy strategy holds. With circular approaches, we find ways to prolong the durability of our products, and by that increase the value of those long after the first use cycle. Increasing the durability of a product can have impressive implications. To name one circular success story, the recycling of aluminum. By using more secondary aluminum instead of primary material, CO2 emissions can be reduced up to 95% instead of making aluminum out of bauxite. Already to this day, the global production of secondary aluminum is double the size of the production of primary aluminum, and it has a noteworthy recycling rate of 69%. Another example is glass. It is a popular recycling material since it can be recycled up to 100% if sorted correctly. While some countries already achieve recycling rate of 90%, others stay only at 35% rate. Again, there is still a lot of improvement potential here. Circular economy is one of the many instruments of the diverse toolbox we possess to effectively tackle climate change. This is my third point. To be able to use this tool effectively, we need a stable market of raw materials from the circular economy. This means we need a level playing field between actors using the producing primary and secondary raw materials. Materials such as steel, paper, various metals are already reprocessed in large scale and are a highly integrated part of our current material sourcing process. This is due to the positive monetary value they can generate by being recyclable without significant loss of quality. More challenging, on the other hand, is the market situation regarding recycled plastics or special metals. To better integrate such recycled materials in production process and products, new market incentives will be needed, provided that those can create an advantage in comparison to the primary materials. Advantages in this context are either emission reductions or the improvement of supply resilience. The transition to more circular approaches in supply chains can vary very promising business opportunities. For example, the matter of landfilling of municipal waste. In order to seriously reduce emissions, we need to act and we need to forbid the untreated storage of municipal waste in landfills. First, this procedure produces a significant amount of methane, which is 20 times as harmful as CO2. And second, it is also a missed opportunity for recovering waste and restoring raw materials. Crucially, targets to ensure supply reliability must also be aligned with climate protection. We need a coherent understanding of how emissions reductions can be accounted for and how circular economy targets can be reasonably linked to climate targets. CO2 emissions reduction must be considered among the whole life cycle. One way of doing so is by introducing recycling credits, which can be used to account for the emissions saved by virtue of circular value processes. This is a challenging project and it requires the comparison of raw materials from different process and production steps. Furthermore, we currently do not have a coherent understanding of how emissions reductions from circular activities can be accounted towards climate targets. However, once we find a coherent framework for this challenge, it will significantly increase planning security for businesses. The fourth factor and useful lever is green public procurement. This is a factor not to be underestimated. In the EU, public procurement amounts to an average of 12% from the total GDP, which is 2.3 trillion euros annually. Creating manageable and clearly defined policies which prioritize the use of climate-friendly products and services in this sector could mean an important boost for demand of the circular economy. This will set additional and strong incentives for businesses to invest more in the circular economy. Here we need political clarity and a broader integration of the same consistent policy. Let me conclude. I talked about the potential the circular economy presents to global markets, not only but especially regarding raw material supply and climate change. To foster its many forms of implementation, I proposed 4 factors crucial for success. First, the need for a broad integration of a design for circularity in product development process. Second, the need for stable markets of products from the circular economy so they can be competitive. Third, the smart alignment between climate protection and circular economy targets. And as fourth and last point, the leverage of public procurement to set incentive and boost the demand for circular products. Those factors are in part already in progress. However, most of them lack comprehensive rules on a global scale. If we want to reach the goals of the UN Agenda 2030, we need to be more concrete. The agenda represents a major change to align supply chains and products, to introduce environmental standards and to reduce emissions, and this on a global scale. Economic development must be decoupled from environmental destruction. We have to take this chance seriously. Collaboration is key, reducing emissions in a transnational effort. On a European level, I'm curious to see the European deal come into place, with one of its corner blocks, the Circular Economy Action Plan. As I've already stated, the regulatory framework must be improved to foster operability, including the waste hierarchy and including the regulation of the landfill situation. Those frameworks, EU-wide and on the UN level, embody a unique opportunity to bring together communities, industries, and politics with a shared common goal, a sustainable future. To achieve a resilient system, we need to analyze business activities in a global context. Supply chain management is a global undertaking and does not stop at European borders. I would like to use this opportunity at the end of this keynote to remind everyone present that we, as representatives of industry, carry responsibilities. These are uncertain times ahead of us, and we have the real potential to influence the pace of climate change in positive ways. We, the industry, have to be part of the change to become a more resilient, more considerate in terms of environmental issues, and this while staying innovative. Thank you very much for your attention. I wish everybody a great event. We will have exciting panels ahead and some room for discussion later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Johannes Kirchhoff, for this very, very interesting keynote speech, which you highlighted a lot of interesting approaches and key factors for making a circular economy happen and to connect the model of the circular economy with questions like climate change, raw material supply, stable supply chains, market opportunities, and business models. So, and I'm very happy to have the opportunity later on to discuss all these opportunities. Thanks again, Dr. Johannes Kirchhoff. And before we enter into our panel discussion, we would like to take the opportunity to get some insights from academia. And we are glad to have with us Professor Dr. Melanie Jäger-Erben. She is head of transdisciplinary research on sustainability in electronics from the Technical University of Berlin. She is sociologist and psychologist, and she has a stronger focus on the social participation and social innovation of the circular economy. Ms. Jäger-Erben, the floor is yours, and we are looking forward to your food for thought.
Okay, thank you. Can you see my screen? Okay, so I have to organize my screens now. Too many screens. Okay, yeah, thank you so much for introducing me and for the opportunity to participate here in this event. And I really appreciated Mr. Kirchhoff's talk, which highlights a lot of things that I will also highlight now. Yeah, my presentation was included in the program with the title Food for Thought. And since I'm a sociologist from my background, I would talk much more about bigger issues like societal change and the role of maybe the whole aspect of transformation, social transformation. And I would like to focus on a term that my colleagues and I consider still a blind spot in the circular economy debate, and which I would like to coin with the term circular sufficiency. So the circular economy debate deals a lot with the manifold problems to solve the manifold problems of the currently mostly linear system of value creation. And here you find a very simplified graph that shows the Schumpeter value creation curve, which consists of the value creation, the value exploitation, and the value destruction, which is the usual development of value of a product. The problem of this logic or system is not only that it's enormously resource hungry and at the same time generates large amounts of waste. The problem also lies in a very one-sided definition of value. So here the product is most valuable when it is offered and sold on the market. All other phases of this process are subordinated to the goal of maximizing value and maximizing profit when it is sold. So value creation in the transformation of resources and components into products has to be as cheap as possible. And the value exploitation, or the phase when the product shows its benefit by being used, should be as short as possible to make people buy new things as soon as possible, and the value destruction should be as easy as possible, because at the moment second-hand products, the trade of used spare parts or recycled materials are not seen as profitable sectors still at the moment. And anyway, often raw materials are usually cheaper than recycled materials, which is also a problem for the recycling sector. So this is the problem that you all know and that the circular economy debate all deals with. The other problem is also that the system, the linear value creation system, is also characterized by a parallel creation of a lot of damage and destruction. So we have a damage creation at the same time, which the current system is not so able to react to that in a sufficient and efficient way. So the idea behind circular economy, of course, as you all know, is to change the whole system. The problem is that the strive towards making the linear value creation as cost efficient as possible in the short term has led to a vast set of complex and problems that are very expensive also to solve. But the solution provided by the circular economy to this complex set of wicked problems is a very smart one in many ways. As you all know, it first of all shifts the focus on the value exploitation, and like this to the phase where in the life of a product where it fulfills its real benefit when it is used. And ideal type circular economy business models try to max out the product's usefulness by providing services to keep it longer, like maintenance, repair, refurbishment, and second-hand. So they provide a lot of loops to keep the product in the use as long as possible. Secondly, circular economy strategies also shift the focus to the value of the resources by developing loops to retain the components, or in the end, the materials of the products. So once taken out of the earth, the materials should stay in the value circle as long as possible. Like this, the damage creation could also be reduced to a great extent. There are many forms of different loops, which almost follow two main sustainability principles, which are efficiency and consistency, use better and use longer in short. But there is one principle that is still missing here from the sustainability principles, and it is sufficiency. And you can ask why it is important to use less if we use better and if we use longer. And the problem is that we do not only need circular products and services, but also less products and a better distribution of them. And to make my argument, I would like to highlight one of our hypotheses that we are researching about in our group is not only the problem of durability or the problem of obsolescence, but also the problem of affluence and the illusion of affluence in a limited world. And that holds a lot of problems, this illusion. And to make my argument, I would like to present some more or less random numbers around this term affluence. So we have at the moment, if you look at, for example, some random numbers from the electronics sector, Amazon, for example, offers 230 million different products on its website at the moment. 67 million among them are electronic items, so different models, not only things, but different models of electronic products. And the amount of products, or the sheer range of products, increases a lot. So between 2014 and 2016, for example, the range of goods offered has doubled. At the same time, we find in our research very often that products are replaced even though they are still working. So for example, 30% of smartphones, 60% of washing machines are replaced where they're still working. No, it's the other way around, 40% of washing machines and 60% of smartphones. Every person produced in Germany produced more than 17 kilos of electronic waste per year. In the textile sectors, we have some numbers like the average number of collections in European textile market has doubled annually between 2000 and 2011, or the fashion retailer Zara launches 65,000 models a year, which corresponds to an average of 200 models a day. And in the markets, 3/4 of the assortment is changed monthly. At the same time, we have a high amount of waste that is already produced in the market. So between 10 and 20% of the garments on sale in the German fashion market are disposed of after they have not been sold, which makes great numbers if you look at how many items of clothing are on offer. This corresponds approximately to 230 to 460 million items. And if you look at our average wardrobe, for example, we see that across different European countries, between 50 and 90% are not even used so much. So people have a lot of clothes which they don't use. If we look at the supermarkets, for example, and the food sector, we find numbers like developments like in 1990, for example, American supermarkets had 7,000 different items on their shelves, which is now between 40 and 50,000. And if you go to the supermarkets and you want to buy some tomatoes, you have the choice between 15 different sorts that are on display. At the same time, 10 million tons of edible food are lost every year in Germany, which is 20% of the total food consumption. So I'm just offering these numbers not to highlight some of the producers or retailers here. It's only some numbers that I just took out of the market, so I could present anybody here, I think. The problem of affluence is, of course, a problem of the so-called global north, whereas many people living in countries of the so-called global south know exactly what it means to live in a limited or even scarce world. But it's also a problem here. And I don't know if you have read this report that in 2020, the total mass of products exceeded the world living biomass. So we have produced more human products than biomass at the moment on Earth. So the thing is that, we can also find, if we look more in society, and we do a lot of consumer research too, that we have also this contradiction between, on the one hand, a very consumerist orientation. So people like to shop, people define themselves by shopping, by owning things, by changing their things. At the same time, many people are very pessimistic about their society. They think they live in a throwaway society and that they feel very uneasy about that. And they find it also exhausting that there are too many things on display and things are constantly changing. So the illusion of affluence in a limited world is something that I think it's important to also think about, because you can't persuade people to buy sustainable things or to buy less things if at the same time they go in the supermarket and find 15 sorts of tomatoes on display. So this is something that is interesting to think about. And how can we come from having the illusion of affluence in a limited world to managing the affluence in a different world? So not only thinking about new products, new services that enter the market, but also how we deal with the market that is already there and how we deal with all those products that we already have. So the question is, do we need a circular sufficiency strategy, and what does that entail? One very general question is to think about what is value and value creation. So for whom is value created at the moment, and what is value? Are there different forms of value, and how can we distribute them? What is enough? So how many things do we need? Do we need 15 different sorts of tomatoes, or 200 different garment models each day changing? Or how to foster those strategies that are also part of the circular economy, like reduce, refuse, or declutter? And the last question, also important, how to provide fair distribution. So circular sufficiency could be defined as not only creating loops, but also creating thinner loops and providing enough value for all with these kind of loops or circular value creation networks. And two questions that I find interesting to research about, also very practice-oriented, is, for example, how to foster enoughness and how to support consuming less but better with sufficiency-oriented business models. And there are some general ideas around that idea of sufficiency. For example, how can we foster frugal innovation or convivial technologies instead of very complex new products that have already a very big ecological footprint when we buy them? How can we work, introduce more human labor again in the economy, so people do things themselves, or more services are provided around in the production and consumption system? Or other ideas that we discuss sometimes is isn't there a business model oriented or based on the energy contracting idea that people have contracts where they are awarded for saving things, for using less? Like my insurance, for example, awards me or reduces my my fees when I use less of their services. Or we have a big market around diet consultancy. Why don't we start thinking about CO2 diet consultancy? Just some random ideas around this idea of sufficiency-oriented business model. The other question could be how to organize and implement supply chains that are oriented towards solidarity, or more thinking about, instead of chains, of net supply networks that foster distributional justice and sovereignty. There are some ideas also and practices that are interesting here. For example, the common good matrix, or different forms of open design, distribution of designs and sources. Also a project that we are researching on is the product passport. So the idea to have a passport for each product that has information about how it is made, how it is used, and how it can be recycled, and so on. And some other ideas around the creation of different forms of supply networks, the circular regions, which try to create circular economy networks and circular value creation networks within regions to distribute the local resources to meet the local needs. Or the idea to have supply networks that are dealing more with skills and services instead of materials. So I hope that there were some food for thought, and I've been maybe a bit provocative sometimes, but that often makes it more foodie for thoughts. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Dr. Marie Erben. Very interesting presentation, and I think we have now, first from the industry side, then from academia, a lot of interesting approaches and dimensions of the circular economy. Let me just pick up the impressions from my side from your presentation, Professor Melanie Erben. I think very interesting is to look at the model of a circular economy from the three mentioned dimensions: consistency, efficiency, and of course sufficiency as well. The question of how we are creating value and for whom, and a third dimension is what is the supply chain or a means of supply chain in circular economy, and do we think about supplier networks or circular supply networks? That for me were three, of course, among others, interesting approaches to rethink circular economy as a strategic model for business and for society. Thank you very much. And we will pick up some ideas of both the presentations in our panel. So I am very happy to start the panel with our 4 very interesting and hiring panelists. Let me say some words about the structure, how we will lead the discussion. In the first round, we will give each of our panelists 2 to 3 minutes to present himself and to give an impression in which fields or at which point of the circular economy he or she is working at the moment. And then we start an open discussion with some questions, topic-related questions, and we'll make a short wrap-up at the end. If you have from the audience questions, you can use the chat, and then we will try to integrate some of your questions to the panel. Yeah, let's start with the introduction round, a very quick one. I would like to start with Tara Nils. Tara Nils is Global Positioning and Advocacy Circular Economy, working for Covestro. Tara is a lawyer and, of course, from the polymer industry. And we are very, very happy, Tara, to have you here. Your experience, which you have from different positions before as well in business representation associations, but now as an expert circularity for polymers, one of the most challenging fields, I would say, at the moment in the circular economy from business perspective. Tara, just some words about you and your role in circular economy, please.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Klaas. Hello, everyone. Hello from Düsseldorf. That is close to Leverkusen, where Covestro, the company I'm working for, is headquartered. Covestro is, as Klaas just said, a plastics producer or a global polymer producer for high-performance materials. And we have key production sites not only in Germany, in Leverkusen, but also in Europe, for example, Belgium, Spain, also in the United States, China, Thailand, just to name a few production sites. So we are operating globally. Our polymers are used in various applications and value chains and products that are, for example, insulation materials for housings, in lightweight materials for cars, mobility, but also, for example, in medical devices. And a while ago, Covestro has decided to make its corporate vision to become fully circular. So this is really a bold vision for a plastics producer. So this is also what is now driving our business and what we are doing at Covestro every day to fulfill this vision to become fully circular. And to get there in many areas, as you can imagine, we really have to turn upside down what we are doing, what we are used to do, what we have been used when we have over more than 100 years developed our more or less linear value chains. And just some examples in this area for us are, as a plastics producer, to become fully circular, of course, we have to develop recycling technologies in order to avoid that our materials at the end of their useful life end up in landfills, the environment, and that we are able to make something good out of them anymore again. Then plastics is part of the chemical industry to a large extent are built on fossil raw materials, so coal, gas, oil. And this, of course, has to change. It's not only the transition in the energy sector, we also have to switch the material basis if it's fossil in the material sector. This is something we are looking into. Biogenic sources are one option, but of course also waste. And yeah, to get there to the waste, we of course have to think how to get our products back. And you just saw a few loops that Melanie Jäger-Erben showed, and this is also something we are looking into, of course, every day. In parallel to developing the recycling technologies, of course, we also need feedstock, and this is something where our value chains are, of course, very interesting to see, okay, how can we get the materials back So I'm really happy to be here today. Thanks for the invitation, and I look forward to discussing here with everyone, our value chain partners and other stakeholders in the value chain, how we can enhance this circularity. Thanks.
Tara, thank you very much for being with us today. Thank you, and we will discuss, of course, later in the panel. Let's switch for a moment to the non-government organization side before coming back to a business representative. Today with us is here Stefan Adi, Director of the Policy Integration and Circular Economy of the European Environmental Bureau. I'm very happy to have you, Stefan. Stefan has a degree in philosophy and environmental management, a lot of experience in Brussels as well as in other countries dealing with topics of the circular economy, the creation of circular economy topics in other fields like climate change and sustainable development. Stefan, floor is yours.
Thank you very much for introducing me. Thanks for inviting the European Environmental Bureau to this debate. The European Environmental Bureau is a federation of green and citizens-based non-for-profit organization. And we indeed monitor closely the development of EU policy, but we now try more and more to extend toward a global level, being aware of the need to extend the circularity beyond our EU boundaries. I had prepared 3 entry points before hearing Dr. Kirchhoff and then Dr. Jäger keynotes, and I must say I'd like to really point to the fact that it's impressive for me that in an industry lead event, we can refer so clearly to fundamental levels of the circular economy as Dr. Kirchhoff has made, and even mention sufficiency as Dr. Jäger has made. So I'd like to thank you for this. And my initial input would be, can we be serious about this? And when I say, can we be serious? I mean, can we orient the market? Can we orient the competition toward, I would say, the 4 factors mentioned by Dr. Kirchhoff, and toward a circular sufficiency, which will be, I would say, aligned with the carrying capacity of the planet and what we call a safe operating space, where we've got social minima associated with environmental maxima. Really the entry points is we cannot continue using the same amount of natural resources. There is not enough for all, and this has detrimental effect on climate and biodiversity. I think it's been very clearly stated by Dr. Kirchhoff. And we need to set a transformative circular economy at EU level. And I insist on transformative. It's not about a smooth transition. It's really about a radical transformation if we want to really align with the carrying capacity of the planet. I think for this, we should really try to have a high level headline target on circular economy as we have on climate and energy. Today, it's very strange that circular economy is everywhere, but we have no unifying target to drive collective action, to drive stakeholders toward really the implementation of circular economy practices when we've got a climate goals, when we've got an energy saving goals, for example. And then finally, I'd like to insist on something mentioned by Dr. Kirchhoff, but I think very fundamental. There is no carbon neutrality without circular economy. And I think at the moment, we are still missing the potential of circular economy in our climate policy. And if I see what the Commission has released for the Fit for 55% package, which is considered one of the most ambitious package ever, and it probably is, there is a clear blind spot on the role of circular economy. I think that we need to address through the co-decision process. I will stop there for the moment. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Stefan. A lot of very interesting approaches for our discussion, I'd say. And you mentioned already industry and the European Commission, and we have the European Commission as well here. But before coming to the European Commission, I would warmly welcome one of our hosts today, Mr. Alberto Nobis, CEO of DIHK Europe. Welcome, Alberto. Alberto is economist, a long experience in logistics, an expert in logistics. Alberto, the floor for a short presentation is yours.
Thank you, Klaus. I'm not sure I'm an expert on logistics, and after the explanation of the panelists, I'm really embarrassed because I know very little about circular economy. But anyhow, thank you for the invitation. Very proud to represent Deutsche Post DHL in this forum. I've been working in this company 15 years. So for the standards actually of the logistics 15 years, I'm still a baby, because normally, top executive are serving the industry for over 30 years, 35 and etc. So still learning a lot. But one thing I know for sure, and I can reassure Stefan in his question, we're very serious about sustainability. We've been engaging and challenging ourselves from a long time. The initial target for ourselves as being conscious of our role in reducing the CO2 emission, talking about transportation in general, was to become more efficient. And since 2008, we set for ourselves very ambitious target to reduce the consumption of fuel, and therefore to improve the efficiency. And we've beaten our targets in advance, but we are absolutely sure, and we renovated our commitments even recently with the production of a very comprehensive ESG policy. And I will invite everybody to join the Deutsche Post DHL website to understand more about our ESG policy. Very keen to exchange our experience and to contribute, if possible, to a common understanding what are the practical opportunities for us to contribute to circular economy. So thank you for the invitation.
Thank you very much, Alberto. I'm sure we will all have the opportunity to get something from your long experience, because our goal in the panel later on for all of us, I think, will be to connect the our topics of circular economy and international supply chains / networks. And I'm really looking forward to hear then again from you and your experience. Last but not least, our first panelist is Mr. Neil, and here representative of the European Commission, advisor for circular economy. And I think from a European perspective, circular economy became a mega trend topic in policy as well. We had a famous saying now from Commissioner's President Ursula von der Leyen, in which she announced her new Green Deal as new growth business strategy for Europe. And she said this is a man on the move moment for the European Union for the next decades. So Mr. Neil is one of the experts in this field in the Green Deal from DG Environment, and inter alia deals with the topics of circular economy, sustainable product initiative, which will be later on, of course. And Ms. Jäger mentioned it before, some interesting projects like the digital product passport. So, William Neil, please introduce yourself.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm a bit of an endangered species. I'm a British official working in the European Commission, but they're still keeping me on for the moment, and hopefully I'm useful. I've worked 13 years in the private sector and for quite a few years on industry policy and enterprise policy, and I've been in environment policy for about 10 years. And in that time, I've seen it really develop radically from something which is based very much on legislation designed to punish the polluters and stop excess and bad behavior, to something which is really in the mainstream of economic policy. As you just said, Ursula von der Leyen has really put the Green Deal at the center. I mean, it is really part of a coherent approach. so that's gratifying. That's fantastic, and we're very busy working on that. And I can say a little bit more about what we're doing in a few very important areas, things like the taxonomy and the Sustainable Products Initiative and the digital product passport. But I have to say also, we're seeing in the post-pandemic recovery plans, the stimulus packages, that it's, even if we're all talking about circular economy, we've got the right narrative, there are strategies in several member states, you're talking about it, the whole business sector is talking about it, we see struggling in terms of how to actually do it. And we've seen in the recovery and resilience plans we've got from member states, circularity is difficult to do because it needs a systemic approach. So we still have a long way to go, and this kind of discussion is extremely important. And just to pick up on a couple of things which were said in the fantastic introductions, I agree with Stefan that the framing was brilliant by Dr. Kirchhoff and by Professor Jäger-Erben. I picked up on what Dr. Kirchhoff said at the end about the need for the right regulatory framework for this to happen. I think this is happening. I said that we've moved from punishing polluters. Legislation is still very much at the basis of what we're doing. But as Stefan referred to, we need radical change.
Yeah, we lost him on the radical change.
Okay, William, can you hear us again? No, I don't think so. Okay, then I think we give him some minutes to refresh his connection. But first of all, thank you very much to all of the four panelists for this introduction and set the frame for our discussion now. Let me start with the first question and widen a bit the focus from the European perspective to the international perspective, and to start with a topic which was mentioned sometimes today. It was the COVID pandemic and broken supply chains. And the question if the circular economy has the potential as a strategic approach to make our supply chains maybe to supply networks and to get more resilient supply networks. That's for the beginning, and there I would like some insights or some perspective from our panelists from the industry. Tara, maybe you can start and share your views. How affected the pandemic Covestro's supply system, and is Covestro from this experience rethinking something in their supply system, maybe in the field of circular approach?
Yeah, thanks, Lars. So fortunately, we were able, due to good planning and plant management and so on, to cope quite well with the challenges that occur during the Corona crisis. But I guess, like everyone in business and in society, that showed also the shortcomings of the global value chains that we are operating in, and what can happen if, for example, ports can't deliver materials, raw materials, products whatsoever from one part of the world to the other. And as I said before, circular economy is our corporate vision. I strongly believe that by circular economy, this is really a trigger to address those shortcomings that we've seen in global value chains for two reasons. Well, the one is, of course, when we start in a narrow sense of circular economy, and I don't say that circular economy is only about recycling, but if we recycle locally products and use the raw materials that are built in, we just add a new, an additional raw material base, which is local and which is not so much depending on international value chains, and that can help to make value creation more resilient. But then in a broader sense, as COVID unfortunately most likely will not be the only crisis we will see, and we already see other crises upcoming being present, and we will face new crises in the future. I think the competencies that we build through circular economy will also help us to face other challenges in the value chain. And those are, for example, and just to name a few, digitalization that will be very much enhanced when we implement circular economy further. When we want to become circular, we have to know where our products are going. We have to know how to get them back and how to operate them between networks of enterprises, companies, and so on. And this, I strongly believe, this experience and expertise that we build in the field of digitalization will also, of course, be useful to tackle other crises. One other big principle that industry is changing or getting better at or rethinking is how we collaborate and cohesion in terms of circular economy, because the value chain partners in a circular economy have to work together very much different than in a linear system. Again, the word networks is used very often. They are much more interdependent with each other and work more closely together. And I think if we are all getting better in collaboration and cohesion, this is another principle that will help us to tackle also other crises which may come up. So in a nutshell, I really think circular economy is on the one hand helping us to make our local value chain more resilient, but the other competencies that we also build through circular economy will also, like digitalization, like collaboration, cohesion, will also help us to tackle challenges that we will see through other crises that unfortunately most likely will have to be faced by the economy and society in the future.
Thank you, Tara. Just to check, William, can you hear us again?
I hear you well.
Okay, perfect.
I'm sorry, I don't know what point I was cut off last time, but
okay,
I can hear you well.
Okay, just to bring you back in, if you allow, just one quick question. The Corona pandemic came up to all of us last year, and that was even in the time when the European Commission proposes a lot of plans for the Green Deal. Did you have in this time the feeling that the pandemic will maybe bring problems to bring this ambitious agenda of the green and the circular economy into force, because a lot of actors now do see other and more urgent problems, especially on the side of the recovery of the industry? Or do you think we have now maybe a chance to connect the recovery of the industry with circular economy and make industries more competitive and maybe connected with climate change, as Stefan already mentioned, challenges? How was your feeling in the European Commission?
Well, I hope that you can hear me better than I can hear you, but I think I understood your question. And I think that as we come out of the pandemic, we have seen the recovery and resilience plans and stimulus packages of the various member states trying to take into account the development of investment in circular economy, and it's proved to be very difficult for them. Stefan mentioned that we're not making enough the link between circularity and climate, but I think also we're very much underestimating the link and potential of circular economy for jobs. And one of the things that happens when you try to keep value in the economy is that you create local jobs. If you think of the economy as like a river, a fast-flowing river with those materials coming in from within Europe or from outside Europe, our aim is not just to sort of recycle some of those materials and products. It's to make those materials and products last longer in the economy. And many of the services which are involved in doing that are really very labor intensive. They involve not just low skilled, but medium and high skilled jobs. And I think that that is really very much underestimated. In the COVID pandemic, we have seen that circular economy has been talked about not only in terms of environment, climate and competitiveness, but also in terms of what we call strategic autonomy. The pandemic did really underline how vulnerable we're to supply shocks. And so I think that the combination of that and the potential for local jobs, whether it's in sort of renovation projects on housing stock or in reconditioning, remanufacturing, manufactured items, the potential has been really emphasized by the pandemic. But as I say, that the stimulus packages that we have seen show that no matter how much people understand the narrative of circularity, when it comes to actually delivering in terms of public investment, it's really hard, and we need to do a lot more work on it.
Thank you very much, William, for this interpretation of the situation at the moment in the European Union. Alberto, let me come back to you with a question about services and logistic chains. As DHL, you're really familiar with organizing logistics, and Tara mentioned that maybe we have to rethink how suppliers and products can be or can come back to the producer. From my interpretation, that makes a bit of change in the understanding of supply chains from the production to product to consumer. And then there's a gap maybe to bring products back to the to a manufacturer or to the producer, first step producer. So maybe there's a new business opportunity to close the material or the product cycle. Do you have any, Alberto, do you have any ideas, or were you affected with such ideas in your businesses at DHL?
Yeah, I mean, as everybody said, COVID made very explicit how supply chains are important, because it's very clear that without an efficient supply chain, nothing can be useful or can work. And yes, we're very proud of the role that our company and the entire industry played in the context of the distribution of vaccine or distribution of protection equipments or health systems, and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, the benefit, if you can find a silver lining in a very dramatic and negative situation, is that more than ever for ourselves, we understood how important is our mission. We define our mission as connecting people, improving lives. That you can find kind of generic, but we really believe that this is our role, and is identifying also a little bit of the way we're interpreting our role as logistic leaders. We're connecting 220 countries and territories around the world every day, and the difficulties of providing, for instance, a cold supply chain for vaccine, honestly, is not different from the same challenge that we find every day for multiple verticals and industries and customers. In the sense that our role is critical for the linear economy, so bringing a product from the manufacturing plant to the consumer, but with the same level of let's say efficiency. Historically, we're being serving also the other way around, from the consumer back to the manufacturing plant. As a matter of fact, I am personally managing a business unit which is specialized in one of the segments of logistics, which is called Express. And Express means is the quickest, fastest, more transparent distribution that you can find. Typically, we're serving 220 countries, as I said, next day, apart from now, where unfortunately we need to let's say expand a little bit our commitments, because the next day is impaired with the lack of let's say capacity, unfortunately, during the COVID time. But this is normally our aim, next day. And this next day service with a network service means that, you know, in a lot of industries, we are serving our customer for the reverse logistic. So, you know, typically automotive, or, you know, my perfect example is, you know, industrial manufacturing. You know, if you think about, you know, a typical customer of a manufacturer which is building agricultural machine, you know, you need to have a spare parts right there when it's absolutely needed, because otherwise, you know, the agricultural provider cannot, you know, operate. Or, you know, if you're thinking about an assembly line of automotive, you know, the downtime of an assembly line is costing, you know, probably the reputation, not just money, but the reputation of the car manufacturer. And this is where the express service is absolutely critical, because we are able to bring the spare part right there when it's needed, with the maximum transparency between the 2 points of the distribution. What is interesting to notice that what Tara and also Melanie was referring to is that, you know, circular economy is not about you know, capabilities. And as I said, we are ready. You know, our network is ready and is able to provide that level of support. But there's also a broader concept of connecting different actors. So historically, we've been focusing our services, or our service, let's say, was used to connect two professionals, so two industries, you know, typically B2B. Nowadays, we are connecting people to people. You know, we're connecting, you know, manufacturers to consumer, we are connecting consumer to manufacturer, we're connecting consumer to consumer, we are connecting consumer to brands, and etc. So this concept is of expanding, you know, so the network of the social interaction is very, you know, yeah, familiar for the challenges. And this is bringing the challenge of our industry to a completely new level, because as you can, you know, understand, for instance, for a cross-border, you know, distribution, connecting people who are used, you know, to import and export, meaning, you know, the whole complexity of customs, which is, you know, within that, you know, short time of distribution, is a professional matter. So everybody knows the rules, even in the new, you know, change environment of post-Brexit and post, you know, VAT regulation. But when you are connecting a consumer to a brand or a manufacturer, this is a completely new challenge, because the consumer is not necessarily aware, or a professional, on how, let's say, to comply with all the regulations and everything else. And so that's one part, the knowledge, meaning the communication and the flexibility to adapt your communication to different stakeholders. But you know, it's not just about the knowledge, it's about the density, because, you know, in a typical reverse logistic, you need to have in your network enough density to allow, you know, the shorter period between, you know, the point of collecting when is needed, the spare parts need to be replaced, and the other way around, right? It's not more sufficient to have a good connection between, you know, manufacturing plants, but you need to have connection among potentially all the household, you know, in Germany or France or Italy or US or Canada or, you know, any other place. And the more the markets are expanded, and we're very proud of the role that we played in the last 20 years in expanding, you know, the global trade. The more the trade is expanded, the more this network is dense and is requiring a lot of investments, because you are not connecting anymore, you know, let's say the top 20 countries, you're connecting Africa, Latin America, Asia, Far East, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that is requiring, you know, more knowledge, more investment, and more ways of making these services available for, you know, broader audiences. So, you know, in summary, I believe that the logistics industry is right in the middle of this, because it's definitely an enabler of the economy, the linear, or let's say the first economy, and the circular economy. And of course, you know, we are right there. We have I think, demonstrated, is evident to everybody during the COVID time of how is important, is logistic. And we're very proud to be part of the industry, which is highly competitive but highly professional, because everybody, they say, it's a very condensed market. Basically, only 3 operators, are in the market because of the, the complex of the complexity of the industry itself. And we're very proud to be part of the industry, which is providing great services, in very critical times.
Okay, thank you very much, Beto. Let us stay just some minutes at this interesting approach to bring the actors in a circular economy together. Stefan, maybe you can jump in. I would like to ask you if you can imagine some instruments which would help to connect for example, producers, logistics, and consumers. What came to my mind very quickly was deposit schemes. We know them from some countries for bottles or other automotive batteries in Germany, for example. Are, in your opinion, deposit schemes a good way to give value to products back and to bring them back where they can, I don't know, we can talk about that or repairability, etc. But what do you think, Stefan? Are such instruments helpful for closing loops, for closing material and product cycles?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think a deposit refund system can definitely play a role. We've seen this, for example, for the packaging in terms of collecting, for example, plastic bottle. And it is clear that in countries where deposit refund systems have been established, the collection rate is higher. Littering is also decreased. This being said, I think, again, along the line of more radical change and sufficiency expressed by a previous speaker, I think we need also to make deposit refund systems serve the circular economy. For example, we see more and more deposit refund system for disposable packaging, but in fact, reuse rate of packaging is at its lowest level historically. So we've substituted, reusable bottles with disposable bottles, and I think this goes against, this idea of slowing down material loop and in keeping as long as possible the material in useful life. And also, I'd like to hear Dr. Jäger on this, but I think it also creates a kind of, okay, it's being recycled, I will have the deposit system, so in a way I can use more and more disposable bottles. So I just want to say that while I think that deposit refund system are super useful, the key question might be in what type of context and landscape they operate, which is very important for me. When it comes to what can be done for this, I think once again the role of policy should really not be neglected. And I'd like really to invite the industry stakeholder I can hear today, to really contribute to the policy development, because I hear Tara, I hear Alberto now, and they look like they are ready to do things, but I'm sorry to say that I cannot necessarily hear their voice through their individual company or through their federation to really promote, an actual implementation of circular economy policy. It seems to me that very often there is still a discrepancy between the narrative, I think William also insisted on that, where it seems that everybody has understood, and the willingness to really act. And I think for me, one of the key challenges is really how can we transform the competition? For me, there is no question about industry readiness. There is a question of where do they make most money today? And unfortunately, I think that they still make more money through the linear system. So we haven't set the condition so that the circular economy would become like the default option, the new normal. So most of the business still have a kind of circular economy sector or circular economy division or circular product, but this is not necessarily their main business. This is not yet their core business, and I think it won't become their core business if the policy landscape does not incentivize, does not also push them in that direction. And what I think is very important is that we can discuss every single instrument, but the idea is how we can combine instruments such as the deposit refund system, but also other instruments to really foster the competition towards circularity and sustainability. And we are not yet there. I'd like to give one very clear example, referring to what Mr. Kirchhoff has said, but like this form of crediting carbon benefits for recycled content. We don't have this. We don't have an information about the carbon footprint of the material and product we place on the market. And while for people it's but it's complicated to calculate, but it's complicated to establish, the reality is that we do not have a lot of defenders of this idea, and we cannot promote the existing instrument we could have for this, when for me it's so crucial. Imagine that we have a kind of carbon footprint for product placed on the market that also can unleash a huge potential for investment. Because today we speak about decarbonizing, for example, the energy intensive industry. But what is the security that the product they will manufacture with low carbon investment will be sold on the market? In contrary, if suddenly we say, okay, so the product placed on your market need to come with carbon footprint, and after a certain period we say this is the minimum or the maximum carbon footprint you can have, then we help them secure the investment. We create, a real market for them, and that can, for me, unleash a huge potential for integrated carbon neutral value chain in the future. And I think we are not yet there. So there is a lot of narrative, there is a lot of different instruments which are mentioned, but we are not actually implementing them with the highest and necessary ambition. And we are not, for example, rewarding the savers. So we still have a polluter pay principle. We've got extended producer responsibility instrument. We do not have the equivalent of saver earns principle, for example. So we do not know yet how to reward, sufficiency, for example, in a way that will unleash new business model, new potential, new consumption patterns by business and consumer. And I think for me, the key is here. And again, I invite the industry involved in this event, but BDI members also to be involved more in policy and in a way reflect the narrative they repeat in this kind of meeting and translate them into real policy options that will help them to deliver what they can deliver, but for me are still hamper to deliver because the policy context is not supportive enough.
Thank you very much, Stefan. I think that was two very interesting approaches to lead further the discussion. William, to warn you before, I will ask you in 2 or 3 minutes about how is the Commission thinking about deposit schemes and recycling credits. I'll just give you a chance to prepare. But before, I would like to give Tara and Alberto the opportunity to react on Stefan's statement, if you want to. So is it just so far as the narrative, the circular economy, or are there barriers for businesses we discuss about today that have to be addressed before it comes into practice, to real circularity, as Stefan argued? Tara, do you have comments on this, what Stefan said? We are not. See.
Sorry, here I am.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Thanks, Stefan. So I said I partially agree with what you said, and but I mean, first of all, to make it, we are very serious about that, and I know how many people in my company are working on this topic each and every day to think about how to make this a reality. But on the other hand, to be honest, yeah, we are just at the beginning, and the reason for this is because for over 100 years, the company I'm working in and the value chain our company is operating in, the chemical industry, has optimized this linear system to efficiency in many areas. And for the plastics industry, circularity is a little bit like the situation now, like the energy sector was 20, 30 years ago. It's really about a transition of the sector. And in the energy sector, we all know renewables, they didn't just popped up like out of the nothing. They needed policy support. And that is, I guess, exactly what you said also, Stefan. We need supporting policy framework to make this transition real, and also make it quicker, because we don't have another 30, 40 years now. And in that regard, I think we can learn from the transition in the energy sector. We need instruments in the area of really a consistent and also ambitious, strong climate framework, because if we have this already triggers a lot of circularity, it should trigger. But then looking at really into the details, because as I said, our value chain has to be turned around, our processes have to be reinvented. I mean, what we are doing with recycling is getting the plastics, turning them back into the molecules. We have made perfect processes to turn the molecules into polymers. Now we have to think about how to turn them back into molecules and other chemicals to rebuild materials out of that. And there we need policy support to scale up those technologies, like we had 30 years ago, for example, with photovoltaic, with windmills and so on. This could address the supply side. Then, of course, we have to consider how can then this be considered also in the production of end materials. How do different other value chain partners take new materials up, more sustainable, more circular ones? There are instruments for sure. And yeah, and then you already named EPR schemes and so on. They can help for other areas, for example, to enable, first of all, that we have at the end of the life better separating, better sorting of materials, better waste management as a prerequisite to bring materials back into the loop. But we really have to look into each step of the value chain, and because I think in the end it will be not one size fits all instrument for everything, and each part in the value chain probably needs its own kind of support to really implement circular economy to the best extent, and also to the extent that they are responsible for in the value chain. And there we will probably need a mixture of different policy instruments, and for sure support from the European Commission.
Thank you, Tara. Just to end then with this round for coming back to William, Alberto, do you see policy barriers to get a business like DHL more active in the field of circular supply networks?
No, I don't think so. As Tara said, I partially agree with the vision of Stefan, in the sense that I don't think, as far as DHL, Deutsche Post DHL is concerned, it's not just narrative, in the sense that, going back to my example before, yes, we are in the middle of the circular economy since years, because providing spare parts to expand the useful life of products and manufacturing devices has been there forever, and to the extent that there is demand, we are there, right? So we don't need to do any more policies or change laws and etc. The commitment that we have is that we can bring spare parts back when it's needed, and our commitment is to make it in a more sustainable way. That's the reason why I put a lot of emphasis on our, let's say, environmental sustainability element of ESG, because we cannot change the consumption patterns or the ethos of the consumers who needs to consume less. This is not what we can influence. What we can influence is making sure that there is a network available for the people to use, and making sure that our services and the connection is as efficient as possible, so that they can rely on our network to bring services backwards. But our commitment is to make it in an ecological way. So that's the reason why our emphasis for 12 years has been on the efficiency, and it will be much more on the efficiency. So that is for granted. Yes, there are some areas of let's say help that policymaker can provide. For once, I would like to give a little bit of a break to William. My observation is not the European community is, for instance, in the context of making our service more sustainable, is very advanced. And the roadblocks that we see multiple times are the implementation on the single states of the European Union. In the sense, I give you the perfect example, electrical vehicles. So our commitment by 2030 is to have at least 60% of our fleet electrified. And we're in a good pattern, right? This year only, probably in my business unit, as an example, we can move from 4% electric vehicle to 10% electrical vehicle. And in probably the time between now and 2030, we can exceed that up to 75%. Now the industry is providing vehicles with the driving range that is exceeding our needs. So again, the manufacturers are making their own duty to contribute to our target emission. Unfortunately, what happens is, despite the law in Europe is allowing our drivers to utilize the vehicle with an electric battery inside, capping the tonnage to the level that they can drive with their own license. In a lot of countries, the battery weight is included into the consideration of the weight vehicle, and therefore in a lot of countries, our couriers, they cannot drive an electric vehicle because they need to change their license. And this is not because of the lack of the European union policy, because the single state is not implementing what is required by law in Europe. So sometimes it's not the European community, I think, and I have multiple examples in different ways, is really how the single states are reacting to that. But let me go back to our role in terms of circular economy, how we can contribute. Well, the perfect example is plastic. In Deutsche Post DHL, of course, we are consuming a lot of plastic. And we're aware that the technology is not ready to have either a plastic-free envelope, because technology is not that advanced. What is available in the market has also not just limitation in terms of cost effectiveness, but in terms of performance. Probably you have seen our DHL envelope in multiple cases. The alternative technology are not providing performances, so that this envelope most of the time is, for instance, wearing out more quickly, and the risk is that the contents on the envelope is not protected, so there is a challenge there. So what we did is to reinvent the process, and I give you two examples that there is not literature, or what you say, Stefan, is not narrative, but is real fact. One, we call it easy green packaging, and is more than a test that we did in collaboration with some of the fashion industry. Basically, if you figure out our courier, is bringing a standard DHL package, white plastic, to the consumer, we figured it out, instead of using plastic envelope that we need to destroy, to utilize a reusable kind of bag that the courier can utilize for that shipment, and for the next shipment, and for the next probably hundreds of shipments. That's our answer on how to make it, circular. So that object is no more something that is linear, that can be destroyed and potentially recycled, which is the emphasis that we have on a different, let's say, pillar of sustainability. But we want to replace something that needs to be recycled to something that can be reused multiple times. Another example is the wrap. Probably you are familiar. Typically you will see a pallet, you see the materials, and normally, the standard technology is to use a plastic wrap to secure the contents on the pallet. Then, of course, is presenting the same, challenges. Is plastic and is going to be destroyed and etc. So the idea is to use what we call big belt. So is an instrument that you can put, on the top of the pallet, and we engineer the pallet and we engineer the belt so that the same, let's say, need of securing the material will be achieved with the same level of standards for all our, shipment. But of course, again, it's no more consumable. It's something that we can reuse multiple times. In this case, more in the thousands than in the hundreds. So, to make a synthesis, on one side, we are right there in the center of circular economy because our network is ready to a wider extent of the supply chain of the customer. We cannot influence the customer. We can provide, and we can, let's say, explain what is the benefit of that one, and we can succeed, and we are succeeding in a lot of cases. On the other side, on our own supply chain for the materials, we're making some progresses. And, Stefan, come and check us out. It's no narratives, it's reality.
Thank you very much, Alberto.
Your colleagues to implement, the electric vehicle limitation very fast, because it's something that is nonsense. We're ready to make investments, and in a lot of countries we cannot.
Okay, thank you very much for this. This really good examples. Was already on the way and was happening in the sense of reuse and packaging sector. William, to bring you in again, and I'm sorry for that because I collect some questions for you as a policymaker. I would like to come back to you, and then we have 20 minutes left, and then I want to touch after what's a moment which might be really interesting for our international guests as well. What is going on at the moment on our panel, from our panelists' view, with the connection of two megatrends, digitalization and circular economy. But before coming to this, William, two questions. We heard about policy instruments, and I would like to pick up two of them and just ask you to have or can give us a short insight if they play a role in by the transposition of the Circular Economy Action Plan. We heard about deposit schemes and we heard about recycling credits in the sense of the climate footprint of materials and products. Can you say some words about it from the Commission's view on these two instruments, and will we see them again in some of the proposals of the European Commission within the next month or years?
Well, thank you very much. I have to say my network is very bad and I only hear about 50%. I hope you hear more of what I have to say. I'll just come back on a few things, pick up on some comments I heard, and try to respond a little bit to you on issues of recycling and so on. Professor Jäger talking about sufficiency, and I think that where companies are very strong is in getting profits out of value. And in circular economy, we're talking about value retention. I remember 30 or more years ago in the company I was working in, somebody saying to me, turnover is vanity and profits are sanity. And if you're still thinking about trying to make money out of selling stuff, then really you're not understanding. We need to move towards getting profits from value creation and value retention. Stefan, yeah, it's there's an important role for we policymakers in this, because being a circular company in a linear world, in linear markets and linear value chains is not easy. this is why we talk about the need for a systemic approach. It's very difficult for individual companies to tackle that. And I think one of the ways in which we're moving forward in this is using an instrument we haven't used before, but it's a European level instrument, going back to what Alberto was just saying about, you know, member states maybe not being always up to the mark. We're using the single market. And I think it's the first time really we've used single market instruments to deliver on environment policy. So we're using the Eco-Design Directive already for energy efficiency of products in the use phase, the Sustainable Products Initiative, for which the impact assessment is in front of our regulatory scrutiny board today, and we plan to adopt it at the end of this year. It will be based on the Eco-Design Directive, and that is a Europe-wide instrument which gives us the possibility to set the threshold for design to make sure that we really eliminate those products from our markets which are impossible to get value retention from, that lose value too quickly and are not possible to repair and to recycle and so on. And I think that as we roll that out, we will do so prioritizing the key value chains that we identified in the Circular Economy Action Plan. And just to pick up on what Alberto was saying about electric vehicles, here we're already working on that. We've brought out our batteries regulation, and you can see a lot of the elements. I'm sitting about 40 kilometers from Kaiserslautern, where the second production facility is supposed to be established. And it's a very good case in point of how European regulation can try to set the framework conditions for that investment to work, because we need to make sure that we have the secure supply of secondary raw materials going there. We need to make sure that that's working and that the incentives are in there. And we also need to make sure that there is clear demand. We need to make sure that batteries are designed in a way which enables them to have a longer life, to be reused potentially for energy storage instead of mobility, and then to be remanufactured, listed and reused, and eventually for some of those raw materials to go back into the system, be recycled and pumped back. So I think that we are trying to focus on the most important sectors and materials in terms of environmental impacts, things like textiles. We have a our textile strategy coming out, circular electronics. We have a circular electronics initiative coming out later this year, all following up on our plastic strategy. So really focusing on the sectors and the value chains of highest impact, and our future product policy, Sustainable Products Initiative, will also focus initially on those areas. Coming on to the questions about recycling, I have to say I missed most of the comment on that, but I think that the first point I would make is once you recycle, you've already lost most of the value of the product. So we have to focus on value retention and value maximization of products and materials whilst they're in the economy, and to avoid that waste. And we need to look at things like component harvesting and remanufacturing.
Yeah. Okay, I think we lost you again, William. I'm sorry for that. But if you can hear, thank you very much so far for this interesting insights to policymakers, policymaking of the European Commission. We hope to get back to you in some minutes. Let us continue with, we have like 10 minutes left, and then make, I think, with this, our three panelists quick round. Let's touch for a moment the topic of digitalization. It's often mentioned that digitalization and circular economy have to go hand in hand, and for example, in supply networks and supply chains, and we need more transparency in our supply chains via digital instruments. The Commission is talking about the digital product passport. There are some standardization activities going on in ISO committees. So there seems to be a need, or that policymakers and industry is trying to bring together digital solutions for get more information, more transparency in products and materials. So Stefan, just starting with you again, how do you see these digital product passports? Are they useful for more transparency, and are they useful for maybe getting more information for consumers as well about their products and possibilities to have longer lifetimes of products, or is it just another tool for just industry? What do you think?
Well, I think digital product passports are really essential to unleash the potential of circular economy. I think at the moment, we do not necessarily have all the information we need to have to make the best choice along the value chain, notably regarding material contents, chemical contents, durability performance, or as I mentioned, environmental footprinting, such as carbon footprint. We do not have the necessary information to really create a level playing field. For example, as Dr. Kirchhoff said, there is no level playing field between primary and secondary raw material, because we do not ask, kind of essential question about due diligence, about working condition in extracting country, or carbon credit, as Dr. Kirchhoff said. So I think it's absolutely missing. We've got clear data gap that do not help to unleash the full potential of circular economy. William will probably explain how it could work. I just want to say that we should not rely on something that will be a miraculous database where all the information will be stored. That will be probably not the best solution. I think we've got more agile, more smarter solution to establish this digital product passport. Two additional points. The first point is that I think the key challenge is probably not the digital infrastructure. The key challenge is the acceptability of economic actors to provide the data, because it's a challenge for them to get the data. And then there are still a lot of people considering that transparency comes at a cost, and that we should protect, I would say, trade secret and intellectual property. And I think this is an abusive argument. But the key aspect is, how do we make sure that economic actors provide the data so that through the digital infrastructure, we can access them? And I can tell you that there is a huge debate today on what type of data we could require. As EB, we promote the idea of having, on a short term, data with regard material and chemical contents, with regard circularity performance, due diligence certification for the level playing field, and at least carbon footprinting to start with, to really unleash the link between circular economy and climate policy. This being said, what we see, and where I think there is a good point to make, is there is a bit of a trend to digitalize everything, and whatever the impact and whatever it will bring. Let me give you an example. We had in the National Recovery Plan a 37% condition for climate goals. We had also a 20% condition for digitalization. But when the climate goals were how would you save on emission, the condition for digitalization was merely quantitative. Show us that 20% of your budget is for digitalization, without any condition with regard to the supply chain for this digital infrastructure, without any condition with regard to climate, biodiversity impact of this digitalization. So I think why it is extremely important to unleash the potential of digitalization for circular economy as expressed, I also think that we need to create clear, I would say, condition for the type of infrastructure we can establish, so that the server we use are, for example, aligned with our carbon neutrality goal, that the equipment we provide to user, being a business user or consumer, are durable, are repairable, can be extended through the software support and the firmware support, and we are not yet there. So I think we really need to move along these two directions. More digitalization to share information, but also really greening and making more sustainable compared to what it is today.
Thank you, Stefan. That sounds like a complex and promising approach at the same time. Tara, would you agree on what Stefan said? Is it, do we have to be careful not to digitalize everything just because of digitalization? And what do you think as producer of polymers with, I think, with a lot of special ingredients in your products, which you maybe do not want to share with other companies or the public. What are do you have in Covestro views on if using such a digital system, not a database like we have it, like the European Commission invented it with some of you maybe know the SCIP database, but a passport, is it a good idea? What do you think?
Yeah. So perhaps, as I said also before, when we go circular, when we build circular value chains, the value chain has to find new ways of working together, new ways of being connected. And I agree with Stefan there, transparency is really key. There not only to build this value chain, but also to speed up, because if we all know better what we are doing, we can be quicker. And if everyone stays within its comfort zone, we will be slower. So, and I think Alberto also mentioned, and he's also providing a lot of transparency, as at least I always know where my packages are and so on. So really, transparency is key for the whole value chain. Now, we have a lot of information there, and a lot of information is outside. Look in the internet and everything, and sometimes it's also difficult to find what is the right information. What is the information I need now to make a decision? And here we find a smart way to provide the information to each and everyone who is concerned by this information, to fulfill his part in the value chain to make things circular. And this must not necessarily mean a blank sheet with a protocol of 1,000 million information. Some are confidential, some are not, because if someone is not concerned about it, if it's not this business, then it shouldn't be revealed to them. But this is exactly where we have to find ways of how can we provide the necessary transparency. And I reiterate, transparency is really key, but how to manage all this information in a way that everyone who needs the information can find the information, but that it's appropriate information, so that we can really build circular value chains. And just one example to show that we are committed to that. Covestro is working, for example, in that field. We are partnering with Circularize, that's a startup from the Netherlands, I think also funded by European programs. There we develop blockchain technology, open protocol standard, where informations from the value chain, from products contents, over carbon footprints, everything can put in there, so that this transparency in the value chain is given. And we started first not trials, but for example, with Porsche and other partners in the value chain, we established already this protocol to see how it works in practice. And yeah, we really have to move forward there. And I agree with you, transparency is important.
Thank you very much, Tara. We have just 5 minutes left, ladies and gentlemen. And I think it's time for a really quick closing round with all our panelists. William, if you can hear me, I would like to start with you if your connection is good at the moment. And I would like to ask all of you to give me or 3 keywords or concepts which, in your view, are now key to bring the circular economy really as a business model and in the national level, European level, and worldwide, bring it alive from, let's say, with Stefan's word, from a narrative to practice. So just 2 or 3 keywords, we will collect them, and we will see how far we are close to each other or not, and we will come to our next events. William, if you can hear me, just start with you. And maybe in your case, I would like to ask you to say some words for the to the digital product passport of the European Union.
Yes, thanks very much. My net seems to be working better, so I keep my fingers crossed. The digital technologies are neutral. They can be used either to accelerate linear consumption, or we can use them to enable circularity, and it's how we use them which is important. And this is what we're trying to do with the digital product passport, which we plan to adopt proposals for again by the end of this year. And our logic is that so much of a product's value now is bound up in the data which is attached to the product, but most of that data is lost during the journey of the product, from its sourcing through to its final disposal. And we have the technology already to keep that data attached to the product. Alberto, very well, the technology is there. I bought a pair of socks for my son a few weeks ago, which had a QR code on, which told me all kinds of information. So the technology is there. But as Tara just said, so much of it is about making sure that the right data is available to the right person at the right time. And we need, I think the challenge isn't the technology, the challenge is really in the system to actually, and the role of the Commission is to convene the stakeholders to make sure we get agreements and protocols, value chain by value chain, on what data is available, what data is needed. And to answer to Stefan's concerns, that data will be decentralized. It won't be held on some massive server in a Brussels basement Commission building. It will be where the data is created, that it will be held. The challenge is to make it accessible and to make sure that we have the right interoperability, that we have agreement on that access. And we're talking about global supply chains as well. So we need to make sure that producers around the world are willing to make that data available, so that when we come to try and service those products in Europe, we can do that. And we're talking about not just static data like information on chemicals and so on, which is all very useful, important for consumers and recyclers. We're talking about dynamic data. So to know just the point at which an electric vehicle battery is less performant and it has to be transferred from being used for mobility for storage, to make that market work, so that we can really have a proper idea of the residual value of that battery at that stage and make the transaction and market work, to record that transaction. All of this dynamic data is fundamental to actually getting the most value out of products as they go through the system. So the digital product passport, basically in 2 words, will be a unique identifier on each product put on the European market, and related to that, rules on access to data which should be made available through that identifier, whether it's a QR code, RFID, whatever, so access to that decentralized data from there. And as I said earlier, the scope, I think we will focus initially very much on the priority value chains that we have in the Circular Economy Action Plan. So as I say, the proposals are coming up. I think the technology is there. The process to make that work and to get the stakeholders to agree on the important data to make available is going to be the challenge.
Thank you very much, William, for this information, and we are looking forward to see the proposal at the end of the year for the year from the European Union. So 30 seconds for each of you three on the panel. Stefan, 2 or 3 keywords important for making circular economy happen.
Yeah, so very quickly, I think I'd like to start by repeating a recent formulation by Vice President Timmermans: only a regulation, not the markets, can save the planet. So insisting on the need for policy. And in that perspective, I think we really need a product passport and carbon footprinting of product to unleash the potential along the whole value chain. We need to reduce our consumption of resources to go towards sufficiency. And for that, we need to associate the headline indicators as exist for carbon and energy. And finally, I'm convinced that the circular economy uptake can only rely on changing the competition rules for the business, so that what, for example, Alberto has said with regard to reusable packaging becomes not only an industrial choice, but becomes the default option.
Thank you very much, Tara.
Yeah, very broad. I would say new technologies to enable circularity, new raw materials for the industry, moving away from fossil raw material based to circular economy, and last but not least, to really rethink value creation by redesigning the value chains and moving from a value chain to value cycles and networks of enterprises.
Thank you very much, and I would like to ask Alberto for some final remarks. We are running out of our time, but we have 2 minutes left, and yes, Alberto.
Oh, sure. You know, I can add a lot of value with other remarks. You know, I can only say that I think, you know, it's time for companies. I like, you know, with the Tara final remarks, you know, the network of companies and the collaboration among companies, what I think is a critical component for circular economy, but not only. Yeah, is inherent in our own mission, you know, to be the hub at the center of this connection. Yeah, as I said, our commitment is to make that connection as green as possible, as social, sustainable as possible. Yeah, we're ready, you know, with a lot of example, and I can only invite everybody to check our website and tell us what they think and give us more ideas. We are here to learn more than yeah, give any indications.
Thank you very much, Alberto. So I will just use 1 minute more to thank all of you, all of your panelists, Professor Dr. Melanie Erben, Oliver Wieck, ICC Germany, and DHL, and Dr. Johannes Kirchhoff for all these really interesting insights. I think we are at the beginning of the journey. My final words, 3 words to bring circular economy alive would be collaboration, smart regulation, and to connect megatrends such as circular economy, climate change, digitalization, interconnect them to bring the best potential to industry, society, and the environment as well. Thank you very much for being with us today. We hope to see you again, one of the other in this webinar series. Wish you all a great day, and yeah, have a great day, and see you again. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.